Hello, my name is Darrell Monkman. Um, I'm going to discuss my video presentation in regards to the curriculum theory and design in Aboriginal adult education course. This assignment is going to discuss my vision for curriculum for Aboriginal people, but it's also going to discuss the relations, the knowledge used or gained, and the action, the method of reaching or connecting with my First Nations students. Okay, um, so my vision, as I mentioned in my papers and assignments, is that I wanted to connect with First Nations online. Now, this is not a new method of teaching First Nations through a remote basis. Distance education has been here for, as they say, well, I would suggest that distance education has been used for thousands of years. And the reason I say that is because if you look at our oral history of Cree people or First Nations, is that you can say that oral history in a way is distance education. You're listening to the values and stories of our ancestors who have lived hundreds of years ago, and we're still living those values and traditions today, 2014. So that message has traveled through time over generations. So in a way, that's distance education. So when the internet began in 1989, this was a new technological achievement, and computers and mobile technology grew so fast in the past 20 years. So we're having a lot of gadgets flooded into the market, and that's changing our perspectives on education. So having a computer on the community or having a computer in the house is not such a big deal anymore. It's actually a common, you know, appliance now to have this computer in your house. However, we do have a lot of First Nations communities and homes who are isolated, and they do not have the internet hooked up to their homes. But I would have to suggest that even those remote communities have power. They have power lines connected to their homes. Through those power lines, we can connect the internet to their homes. Because if they have power to electricity, they can have connection to the internet. This would just, require a little bit of modification to the power grids or the power lines to their homes, but it's not going to cost a huge expense to the infrastructure. Um, so, using the existing power lines to their communities, we can modify that connection a little bit, put certain technology onto the power lines or their power stations or substations, and have connection. We can even have wireless in the community. This is not a new technology achievement. This is actually, a new thing or an old idea. Okay, so getting access to the internet is not such a big problem, I believe. So, for example, if we don't have internet access in the community whatsoever, but we have TV on the community, and we have cable sometimes. So, if we have cable, we can have internet. You see what I'm saying? So, if a community or a house has a TV and they have cable connected to that TV, why not have internet? Because it's connected to a power grid, right? So I think getting access to the internet is not going to be a huge endeavor. There's going to be some hassle there, but it's not going to be a huge cost to reach out to those First Nations learners. Now, my other reason for helping First Nations is to get education and get education to come to them rather than having the learner come to the education. So what I wanted was is that I didn't want First Nations learners to leave their communities and travel great distances and leave their families if they do not wish to do that. I wanted to target learners who were able to stay on the communities and be with their families and not miss home, um, and be close to their loved ones and still earn a degree or an education. So that's the alternative way of teaching and learning that I envisioned or planned. And I know there's a lot of online programs out there right now, but I think some of the issues that they have is there might be that infrastructure divide or obstacle where there might be some, internet hardware problems where maybe the computer doesn't work or there's a bad connection or there needs to be a certain setup of fiber optic cables onto the community to get them connected to the internet. Sometimes there's no cell phone towers nearby, so their mobile technology doesn't work. But as I mentioned before, if there's power lines going to the community, and there is power going to that community, and if there's a school nearby or there's a First Nations band office, and it has an education department or a classroom, you're going to probably most likely find a computer there already. So I think with the internet age, since 1989, it's kind of laid a base or foundation for the internet to exist. So the infrastructure is there already. It just needs to be accessed. And getting that access is not going to be that costly, in my opinion. It can be, but I think there's other alternative ways to getting our education. So my vision is, like as I mentioned before, the summary is to get First Nations access to education online using their cell phones or their PCs. Now, the question is, obviously, if they're using their PCs, they're going to get on with a website, and with that website, they're going to get on to a learning management system, and then they're going to read the lesson, and after the lesson, they're going to participate in group discussion, threaded discussion, postings, giving their assignments, their thoughts, their opinions, listening to the lecture, video lecture or real-time lecture. They're going to answer the questions from the professor, or they're going to answer the questions from their classmates. They're going to see themselves on video, and they're going to see their colleagues on video as well. So there's a sense of community being developed online. There's going to be the opportunity for them to customize their education profile page with pictures or drawings or statements or anything they feel is important to them. There's a sense of ownership to the education. So the vision is to get them to participate as much as possible, but freely and respectfully acknowledge their backgrounds, however poverty-stricken they are, or how uniquely different they are according to the Canadian culture. So there would be no judgment on race or culture in the class. Every classmate will acknowledge and respect their values and traditions, however different or contrary to their own. Um, so it's going to be a great discussion in class to have so many different students coming from different backgrounds. So if we can talk in a very professional way, that's going to be wonderful. Okay, so that's my vision. Now, the next part I want to talk about is the relations. The relations are, as I mentioned, we're going to be online, and the emphasis is not just the technology using the learning management system or the internet to make this a winnable situation. The importance is the relationship I have with my students, connection with them, making sure they understand the material. Now, but I have to mention that this is a bit different from online courses. Is that some online courses, what they do is you'll start a traditional schedule, school schedule, higher education schedule in September, and finish your semester in December. You go through a chunk of knowledge, reading textbooks, articles, participating in assignments, and doing research papers. And through that process or experience, you can walk away with some memories of learning a certain bit of education, and hopefully that education can be useful in your jobs. But what I wanted to do for First Nations is to go a step further than that. I wanted them to get closer to the labor market needs, and the only way to do that possibly was to implement a competency-based modeling approach, where I wanted the First Nations to, I wanted to reward them, or I wanted them to be marked on the knowledge they already know. So if they come in with a rich source of knowledge and experience, and they go through the course at a faster rate than other students, then this is acceptable. This is acceptable, and it should be allowed for them to do this, because we should give them acknowledgement on what they already know. So the traditional way of education was to go through a credit system. So you earn a credit based on time-intensive blocks of period of time. So education is restricted by time periods or time chunks. Over 1 or 2 years or 5 years, you are awarded a degree. Okay, a bachelor's degree under 2 years. A master's degree can be 2 to 3, and then maybe a PhD could take about 3 or more years. But what happens if you want to take an accelerated route of education based on your own experiences and knowledge? So if you can take the test, a benchmark test, and go through a course, you would take many little tests, and through these testing endeavors, you can level up yourself and get closer to graduating a course. So instead of waiting 2 or 3 years to get a degree, you could maybe do it in a year's time, if that's possible for you, and if that's achievable, if you have what it takes to pass that test. So the benchmarks are based on labor market needs, which gets the Aboriginal learner closer to specializing the skills they need to operate in the industry of their choosing. So rather than just going through a traditional way of education and just learning about general things and maybe specific things as well, but not really knowing whether this is a particular importance of knowing this chunk of information. This is going to help me get a job in this chosen field of work. So let me give an example. I never liked algebra, and I think I only got a C grade on algebra, but I never used algebra after grade 12. So why would I study algebra if I don't need it or if I don't want to study it? I survived all right not speaking French. I dropped French in middle school and I survived all right with just the English language. Um, Being a teacher in South Korea, I started from the bottom of, teaching university students, also young people, elementary, middle school, and high school students. And through that experience, I became a better teacher and communicator. So through my communication and through my education as a teacher, I grown in experience. And through that experience, I know certain theories and approaches and methodologies that has helped me and enriched me. So if I take an education course, for example, I might be able to bypass a lot of the information that I already know. So I don't need to know how to communicate to a class when I already know how to communicate to a class. So I would take the communicated competency-based test, and if I pass that test, it's a pass or fail test. And if I pass it, I can move up to the next level. I don't need to wait for the class to finish knowing about how to communicate in the class. You see? Now, I'm pretty open-minded. There's some things, that I haven't learned about, communicating with the class, but I don't need to go with the group. I can be self-directed, and I can just kind of, navigate my own way through the course quickly at my own pace. Now, if I need more time and I fail the competency-based test, well, I'll take it a next time. I just have to reflect on the material more, and then I'll take the test again. Now, I don't want to make the student feel like this is a whole bunch of series of tests and they have to go through this test, but I wanted to let the Aboriginal learner know that the relationship they have is based on a partnership, a brotherhood, where I'm here to help and I'm here to advise. So a lot of it is self-directed, and there needs to be a lot of motivation on their own part to get through the course on their own. But if they're serious about graduating, they're going to do it, and I'm going to try every way possible to support them emotionally and mentally. So I'm going to get them to realize that this competency-based modeling approach is going to give them an edge above other online students, because it's going to keep them sharp on the labor market needs, and they're going to develop specialized skills that are specific to the labor market needs, rather than having just a general knowledge about something and just entering a classroom later and just saying, well, I learned about the philosophy of education and John Dewey and Socrates, but how is Socrates going to help me in this situation communicating math or science to an Aboriginal student in the northern community? So we're going to talk about modern issues, and we're going to talk about First Nations issues with education as well. So that brings us to the knowledge part. Okay. So the first part of my curriculum is going to be focused on the holistic approaches of First Nations, getting them to learn about their past education, First Nations education, oral history, getting them to access to show who they are as a person, as a teacher, and how unique they are and how different they are from other First Nations teachers. So we have to be careful that First Nations teachers are not all the same. They're all different. They come from different backgrounds and different journeys. We all learn differently, and we should respect each other's different paths in life. So, what I wanted was, if I was going to teach First Nations learners how to teach in the classroom, I would get them to discuss their own knowledges and their own histories and own cultures and values and traditions, and then they would be tested on what they already know about education in First Nations in Canada through the competency-based modeling, and they might even shape the curriculum itself. So rather than just listening passively in the classroom of other people's opinions or perspectives, those opinions and perspectives are gathered online and then put into the curriculum itself. Okay? Okay. Now, the second part of the knowledge is to learn about higher education theories and issues and modern problems in the context of education. So we're going to learn some of the approaches and methodologies that have been used in the classroom. But I'm going to, mention and emphasize that this is not the only way to solve the problem. There's going to be times when First Nations who take this course, and when they're learning about education and they want to be teachers themselves, I'm going to try to tell them that you can read as much as you want on Western thought of education, and earn a PhD from Harvard in education. But when you walk into that classroom and the students are not listening to you, and you've tried every theory and approach from a Western point of view and it still doesn't work, you're going to be at a loss of words. So teaching is, seen as an experience, and I can only suggest that it doesn't matter how much education you can achieve. Education or teaching is about experience, and there's been tough experience I've experienced, and I still experience that in my teaching, where I'm not making that connection to my students, and I have to use anecdotes or examples or illustrations or demonstrations or videos, anything at my resource toolbox to get them to learn English in South Korea. So I think based on my demeanor or my personality, I think I'm able to do that successfully most of the time. But there's some of the times where I'm not able to do that. I'm been teaching for 15 years, and sometimes I'm not reaching the students effectively, and I have a degree in education. So what do we do in those circumstances? And we can share our loss or failures in postings. So coming to an online context and sharing our thoughts, our failures, our wins and our losses, we can have a connection with other teachers. And so with this knowledge building, it's a sense of sharing and fulfillment and contribution. So it's kind of like building a community or family online. So sharing your thoughts and ideas in a classroom is really good, in a sharing circle or a healing circle. But we can still have a healing circle or a sharing circle online too. When we have 10 or 20 students online, we can still communicate effectively with each other. Okay. So the action is, again, I wanted, there's a certain level of methodology to my curriculum. Is that, first of all, I mentioned that students will be coming online, getting online, going to the learning management system. They would put daily posts. I would get each student to answer a question that I would have daily, and they would have to answer that question. And those questions are related to education, First Nations education, and they would share their ideas. Now, you don't need to be an expert in education to answer this question. It's based on opinions, and your opinions and thoughts are very, very important. Now, if you can put your answer down and reference it with another source from the textbook or articles that we have in our program, that would be even better, and I would encourage that. So that would be one way of assessment. Another way of assessment or action was, or is to get my students to do online journals. This would be put in a private space of the learning management system, so other students would not read those journals, and they would just write, a sentence, a paragraph, maybe a page if they want, based on their feelings of the course and or how they were, they felt moved by one chapter of the book or anything. They would just write anything on a daily basis. Now, that's not every day, but I'm just saying on a regular basis, they would put something down on their journals. And you can see that they're thinking in the background of what this course is about and how they feel about it. Next part of the assessment is to get them do a video debate. I thought video debates were really important because we have the technology to do videos. If you have a PC, it's good to have a cam PC, or if you have a cell phone, you can do a video and then upload it onto YouTube very easily. It's not that difficult. So you would pick an argument, and there's two sides to an argument. So there would be one side, and you would be debating that side and telling the points of why you think that way or feel that way. And then your team member would be on the other side of the argument, and he or she would be telling their points. So you put those two videos onto the learning management system. Students then collectively look at those videos, watch them, and then they would put a post up and ask a question about it and debate it. So there would be some discussion about it. And so this would be an interesting way of expressing yourself and your thoughts about a certain subject or topic of the course. And I wanted students to do a presentation style because this is a good skill to have when they're in their jobs, because you're doing a lot of presentations and you need to feel comfortable with your expressions. The next would be a research paper. Collectively, as you write through the postings and daily threaded discussions and your debates, you are collecting your thoughts collectively through your journals, and so writing the research paper is not going to be a daunting task so much, and you would write that online and upload it to the learning management system, and then I would read it and then get back to you. So that would be some of my assessments, how I would mark your knowledge. Now, the competency-based modeling is going to be based on questions or testing, little quizzes that is going to be strategically placed in the course. So when you go through the course, you are discussing collectively through the threaded discussions, the questions. But if you feel that you're ready to move on to the next level, you would take a competency-based level quiz and then move on to the next section. So you're not necessarily going through the pace of this classroom pace, you're going through an individual pace of learning. So if you're very strong at, let's say, theories, let's say you already know a lot about classroom theories, then you can take that test, pass it, and then move on to methodology of classroom teaching and spend more time there. So you're not I guess the idea of my curriculum is that all the students are not entering the same entrance door of the curriculum. They're entering the classroom at different entrance doors, and they're leaving at different exit doors as well. So you can get through the course quicker than expected. So the credit you earn is based on your speed of learning. It's not dictated by the teacher or the program. So you don't need to wait until next year to pass. You might pass the course in less than a year if you feel you can do that. But the competency-based modeling is keeping the learner sharp on all levels of their learning. So if you feel that you're ready to move to another level, you can just take the quiz or test and then move on. So that's what I wanted First Nations to learn, is because I think this is really important for them to realize, is because I don't want them just to be earning a credit and then getting a degree. I think there needs to be more expected from them, and I want First Nations to be sharp in their thinking. So for the online learning, I want them to go above standard, and I want them to be ready for the labor market needs. So doing the competency-based modeling will help them understand on a deeper level what is needed to operate and function as a worthy labor market participant. So if they wanted to be effective teachers, for example, if I'm teaching education and I'm teaching how teachers teach, I would want them to take the competency-based modeling approach, and this would be based on benchmarks of high schools or universities if they are willing to teach in those environments. And so once they establish a level of accomplishment through those benchmarks, they're going to be much more stronger in their knowledge base, and they're going to be ready for moving on to more serious, more realistic simulations or environments. So the competency-based modeling gives the Aboriginal learner a more specific idea of education rather than a general idea of education when they're teaching in their classrooms. So based on labor market needs and benchmarks, they can know that there's certain specialized skills that they need to operate as a teacher. And they can be better in touch with their abilities or limitations as a teacher too. So everyone doesn't graduate at the same level. Everyone has a different contribution to give. So I'm not a great writer, but I like to think that I'm a great communicator. So I can, feel very easy talking to people orally and communicating with them socially. But there might be other teachers who are very good at writing and grammar, and they might use that side of, or a skill set, to communicate with their students. Now, which one is better and which one is worse? Well, there's no right or wrong, or which one's better and which one's worse. That shouldn't be seen that way. It's just that every teacher has a different skill set, and everyone has a beginning and an offering. So with this course, you're going to be able to determine which skill set you have that is unique to you. So the competency-based modeling is going to recognize that quickly. Okay, so that's what I wanted to do with the action. Okay, so we're at the 34 minute mark. So I'm going to have to conclude this presentation. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Okay, take care. Bye.